Welcome to this explainer. You know, if you're anything like the typical saltwater hobbyist, you've probably spent, well, let's be honest, thousands of dollars optimizing your gear. We all obsess over the perfect skimmers, precise dosers, and those super high-end lights. But today, we're diving into the ultimate guide for the other half of the battle, building a thriving, completely stress-free community tank. We're basing this whole journey on the latest insights and data from Saltwater Reef Co. So whether you're just sketching out your very first tank or you're a total veteran looking to optimize an existing reef, this is exactly the intel you need to make sure your underwater ecosystem actually, works.
Okay, let's just tackle a massive beginner myth right out of the gate. Is perfect water quality enough? It turns out pristine water parameters, having that exact right salinity, absolute zero ammonia, the perfect alkalinity, that only solves exactly half the puzzle. It's ridiculously easy to get so completely obsessed with water chemistry that we totally ignore the biology. You can literally have the most chemically perfect water on the planet, managed by top-tier computers, and if the social environment in that tank is toxic, yeah, your setup is still going to fail.
Because honestly, perfect water means absolutely zero if your fish are fighting for territory, competing for the exact same food, or worst-case scenario, viewing each other as a midnight snack. Ignoring fish compatibility turns what looks like a beautiful, biologically healthy aquarium into an absolute high-stress nightmare. We're talking chronic injuries, fish hiding deep in the rockwork, just starving to death, and outright predation. You cannot filter out aggression, which is why getting the community mix right is just absolutely crucial.
So, here is our game plan for today. First, we'll look at why water quality isn't everything. Second, the core rules of compatibility. Third, peaceful pairings that actually work. Fourth, who clashes and why. And finally, your smart stocking strategy.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1. Water quality isn't everything, specifically focusing on the store versus tank illusion.
Guys, you literally cannot trust your eyes at the local fish store. It is a massive trap. In the store, these fish often look incredibly peaceful, right? But remember, they're usually small juveniles, sharing really cramped bare-bottom quarters on a strictly temporary basis. They're super stressed and just trying to survive the day. But as they mature in your home display, they grow rapidly and establish permanent, often highly aggressive territorial boundaries. So you simply cannot use a tiny, cute fish's temporary behavior in a holding tank to plan out your permanent, long-term environment.
The data here explicitly warns us against treating fish like temporary roommates. You just can't rely on, oh, but they were peaceful at the store as your predictor. Understanding this really shifts your entire approach to the hobby. Their personalities are going to drastically change as they get comfortable and decide to, claim a piece of your living room as their own exclusive kingdom. You have to buy fish for the adults they're going to become, not the little juveniles they are right now.
Moving right along to Section 2, the core rules of compatibility, or basically the roommate selection process.
So how do you actually predict who's going to get along? Well, you have to evaluate every single fish against 4 distinct factors. First up, adult size. A fish that's 2 inches now might be the size of a dinner plate in a year, and that completely changes your tank dynamic. Second, aggressiveness. Are we talking about a territorial loner who needs a private cave, or a schooling fish that thrives in a group? Third is their feeding strategy. Is this fish an ambush predator, a non-stop algae grazer, or a midwater planktivore? And fourth, habitat utilization. You absolutely must match species by these temperaments. Otherwise, you're basically forcing fish with opposing needs into a dangerous underwater cage match.
Now here's a concept I absolutely love, the ecological niche. Think of this as the specific physical zone a fish naturally occupies in the wild. Like, are they rock-dwelling, midwater swimming, or bottom-sifting? Your tank is essentially a piece of premium real estate. You have to strategically assign fish to different zones so they aren't constantly bumping into each other trying to occupy the exact same square inch of water. I mean, if you fill a tank with only bottom dwellers, they're going to fight tooth and nail, even if the entire top half of your tank is completely empty.
Which brings us to Section 3, peaceful pairings that work. Let's find those good roommates.
When we look at the actual reliable success stories in the hobby, clear patterns jump out based on those rules we just talked about. Many tanks do amazingly well with non-territorial midwater fish, but, and this is a big but, only if the tank is physically large enough and they have totally separate niches. Clownfish, they're wonderful with peaceful reef fish, provided their specific host anemone boundaries aren't messed with. Small wrasses pair beautifully with calm fish in a well-established aquarium, and even famously tricky fish like cardinalfish or gobies absolutely thrive with other docile tankmates just as long as you respect their boundaries and don't mix up their feeding habits.
But here's the catch, right? For any of those pairings to actually work in practice, you have to avoid overcrowding and provide plenty of physical structure.
We're talking lots of live rock, deep caves, and complex swimming routes. Good pairings still totally rely on you being a good landlord. You have to provide the physical architecture that allows a subordinate fish to safely break the line of sight and hide completely to avoid a stressful confrontation. Because if a bullied fish can't break that line of sight from an aggressor, the stress alone can literally crash its immune system.
Okay, Section 4. Who clashes and why? It's time to identify the bullies.
The data points to a few usual suspects when things go wrong. Large angelfish are notorious for constantly harassing slower fish and just relentlessly nipping at vulnerable fins. Predatory species? Well, they're naturally going to view your smaller tankmates and those super expensive cleaner shrimp as a high-end buffet. Then you have dam shellfish, especially the really territorial ones. They will completely dominate open space and terrorize any new additions for months. And finally, watch out for lookalikes. If two fish share the same swimming zone, body shape, or even color, their instinct kicks in. They view each other as direct existential threats, and you get endless chasing.
Now, if you absolutely have to mix active swimmers with territorial reef dwellers, aquascaping is kind of your only real defense. A bad setup leaves a single open zone, which is essentially an arena forcing constant face-to-face competition. A successful setup, on the other hand, uses multiple clear boundaries and specific zones of rockwork mixed with open water. You have to actively build your reef to reduce that territorial overlap. If a territorial fish thinks it owns the entire kank just because it can see from one glass pane to the other, you are definitely going to have a major behavioral problem on your hands.
And that brings us to our final part, Section 5, your smart stocking strategy. This is the execution playbook.
All right, here is your exact step-by-step game plan for getting fish into the tank. Step 1, always start with the least aggressive fish. Step 2, quarantine new arrivals. You've got to protect your display from disease. Step 3, match sizes carefully so you don't trigger an accidental feeding frenzy. And step 4, build in those visual breaks we just talked about. See, there's a deep psychological reason for this specific order. By adding your peaceful fish first and your potential bullies last, you prevent the aggressive fish from just claiming the whole tank on day one. You're giving the timid fish a head start to learn the best hiding spots before the boss moves in.
I actually found this timeline totally fascinating because it should completely change how you shop. In week 1, a new addition might seem totally peaceful while it acclimates, but months 2 through 6, that is when they actually start establishing territory and rapidly evolving their behavior. By year 1 and beyond, they hit their full adult size and show their true permanent temperament. You aren't just buying a fish for this weekend, right? You're anticipating that a friendly, vibrant little juvenile is eventually going to evolve into a fully mature territorial adult. You've got to stock for the long game.
So I'm going to leave you with this to chew on. Are you stocking your community tank just for the first few weeks, or are you truly planning for the lifetime of your reef? Keep these core rules in mind. Respect the distinct ecological niches of your aquatic roommates, follow the data, and I promise you your tank is going to thrive. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and we will catch you next time.